Hey crafters, this is Charmaine from Fantastic Crafts. I hope all of you guys are having a wonderful Monday, and a lot of you are off today since it's President's Day. So I hope you guys are spending it with your family and loved ones and just having a wonderful day. Today we're going to be making this very subtle looking sepia toned watercolor card. So of course, because it's a watercolor card or a technique, I'm going to be using the Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Now this paper has two sides to it. One is more rough and one is more smooth. I chose to use the more smooth side, but you can use any side you like. The other side would just add a little bit more texture. So to begin, I use this frayed burlap oxide, Tim Holtz oxide ink. And what I did was I took my aqua brush and I wet my whole piece of cardstock. Then I took a little bit of that frayed burlap and then just kind of swirled it all around that piece of paper. Now you just want to make sure you have it covered all the way. It doesn't matter if you have lighter spots and darker spots, but you don't want to leave any spots light. I just made sure with that aqua brush that I kind of swirled all the ink together and just blended it a little bit more. And wherever I wanted it to kind of do a little bit more swirly look, I just added a few more drops with that aqua brush, and it just kind of gave more of a marbling technique and look, which I love. So I love doing this part. Once I was satisfied with the look, I went ahead with my Marvy heat tool and completely dried this cardstock. Now, if you see that there's buckling happening or just kind of it going up because of the heat tool just making it buckle like that, just simply heat the paper on the other side, and then you will have it go back to an even piece of cardstock. Now I did go ahead and also put whatever was left on my mat, whatever ink was left on, I just kind of used that and kind of put my cardstock and soaked up that ink just to not waste any of that wonderful, wonderful oxide ink. Then I took this Memory Lane stamp set by May Made It, and I wanted to use that wonderful truck image, and I used that and stamped it with VersaFine ink because it is a waterproof ink and I'm going to be doing watercoloring with it. So I made sure and stamped that well so the ink can transfer well onto that piece of cardstock. Now remember, it's a thick piece of cardstock, so you want to hold it down so the ink transfers very nicely and evenly. Then I took that same frayed burlap ink, oxide ink, and I went around and colored this image. Now this is a very tone-on-tone look, so you build color and layers by adding the depth of color. So lighter and darker shades will give the depth of color. So that's what you're going for. So that's pretty much what I did over here. I just added darker, or that ink, the frayed burlap ink, wherever I felt like there would be more shadow on this truck. Because we are working with watercolor, once again, just make sure after completing each layer or each step, you heat set it and make sure it dries completely, and then move on to the next step. And remember, I said this card is not dimensional at all, so to build dimension, what we do is add colors and add different shades of color. So I used this Alabaster Brutus Monroe ink, which is a pigment white ink, and what I wanted to do with this is create highlights onto this truck. So I went wherever. I'm not the best at this, and I need to probably look at a few more tutorials before I can make a tutorial on this particular coloring technique. But what I did was wherever I felt like the sun would hit this truck, that is where I put the white highlight on. So I just did that, and it's really nice how this ink kind of just blends, and we're going for that tone on tone, so it just kind of blends very nicely into that tone on tone look, and but still adds that little bit of highlighting. So once I colored this the truck, I realized that it was kind of looking a little too flat for me, or like floating in air. So I just took walnut stain oxide ink and I simply just created a dirt road is what I was going for this truck to sit on. Once I was done with that, I wanted to take this relic stamp set by Mimi Made It, and what I wanted to do was make third, fourth, and fifth generation stamping. Do that onto the background of this card I was making. Now you can use any kind of stamps that you have to create this background look, or to add this texture onto your background. But I decided to use that paint splatter and the other little paint dots onto this background. And what I did was I used my alabaster white pigment ink once again by British Monroe and just went in with that. Then I took my VersaFine ink, and with that I did second generation stamping, which is pretty much just stamping off just like you would do with first generation stamping, and then stamping onto your background. And I did that, and as well as that, I also just kind of, whatever ink was left on my stamp, just kind of went ahead and stamped it on. I didn't really care too much about placement, I was just stamping. Once again, before I moved on to the next step, I made sure to use my Marvy heat tool to completely dry that background, because I am going to be embossing on this. So I did use that technique of heating it from the back and the front, just so my paper or cardstock wouldn't buckle and it would still stay flat. So once I was done with that, I took my embossing buddy and I made sure to coat that where I would be putting the sentiment onto this background very, very well with that embossing buddy. You want to make sure, because we did so many layers of watercoloring, you want to make sure that's spot is completely dry and completely well coated with that embossing body powder. Then I took once again the British Monroe alabaster ink, and I took the sentiment from this relic stamp set, and I just stamped it as if I was stamping any sentiment on a piece of cardstock. So I made sure to hold that for a few seconds just so it transfers evenly, because this is a thicker cardstock. Then I went in with a white embossing powder and then coated that completely with that white embossing powder. Now you can see as I was doing this, I realized I didn't coat my embossing buddy too well on the background, so I got some embossing powder on a few parts that I didn't necessarily want, but I did not stress. I just thought, oh, you know what, this will work out perfectly, because again, that adds texture, that adds another layer of dimension. So now we are nearly done with this card. To finish this card off, I always like to do this with most of my cards actually. I like inking the edges of my card front, because I feel like it kind of looks like a more finished look. It looks like this was meant to be just the way it is. It just really gives a finished look, and I really like that look. So I went with that walnut stain, which was that darker color that I used for the dirt. And I just simply went around all four corners of this card and etched the card with that ink. Now I was generous with this part because this is such a tone-on-tone card. I wanted to give it a darker look, so I did do that. Then I took double-sided foam adhesive for this part, because I did not pop anything on this card panel up. So I decided to pop this part up onto the card base. And the other reason I like doing this is because then it makes that watercolor paper really stick down and really flat. So there is no buckling. So I did that, and I completely put that. Now, one more thing I would like to say is that if you did have foam sheets, you can totally do that with this part with foam sheets. I didn't, but I usually do. So I just get some foam sheets, and then I glue it on one side, and then put glue on the other side, and then put it on my card base. But this is what I had, so I used what I had. I then cut an A2 size card base in a brown cardstock to stick with that tone-on-tone look. A2 size card is a 5.5 by 4 1/4 size card, so I just cut that in a piece of 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock, cardstock in half to create my card base, and that creates 2 card bases. And then I simply popped that card panel that I created onto this card base. And that completes my Monday card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this card. It is a very tone-on-tone card with lots of dimension without adding any dimension, and is very subtle. I think it would be a perfect card to give to anyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and this card, and if you did, make sure you like this video and remember to subscribe and hit that notification button so you get notified of any new videos I create. Have a great day, guys. Bye.